Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we go week to week watching something on streaming with all of you folks. In today's episode, primarily, we're going to be talking about DTF St. Louis, the HBO comedy, crime, thriller. Is this a comedy, Sona?
When I turned it on last night, somewhere I saw the description, dark comedy. I guess it's a dark comedy. Not that many LOL moments, I feel, but...
Yeah, there's a couple. One is I can't quite place. There was something that happened in this episode where I laughed out loud. I was trying to remember what it was. But yes, they're few and far between, although there was a few. We could touch on a couple of things that were entertaining, to say the least. There's some other things I've watched too. So before we get into the breakdown of the episode, I wanted to run a couple of things by you that actually dovetail with this conversation. One of them is that, first of all, I had mentioned to you that Netflix had a new series starring Rachel Weisz. It's another book adaptation. This series called Vladimir. Have you heard anything about this?
Or did Only from you, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think, I actually wanted to sample this because it was short. These are very short episodes. And because it did seem to overlap thematically with this show and other things we might be covering in the near term. And even Rooster, which I also sampled last night, because it is a supposedly an erotic thriller. Definitely not. It's more of a comedy and set on a college campus. So I'll talk to you about Rooster as well, which I found very entertaining. The first episode anyway, the new Steve Carell series. But again, kind of a marriage, midlife crisis type story, which of course we're seeing here in DTF St. Louis as well. And I really was so frustrated by this Vladimir series. First of all, I'm so irritated by, we've discussed it here, that where are the, adults with some exploration of, the sex switches, become like this. You've probably heard about this in the media, that they talk to these younger folks and that they're like, we don't want sex in our movies.
Well, they've all watched so much porn at this point that they don't need sex in their movies.
That may very well be a true statement. But at the same time, I feel like obviously pornography is like a whole other genre. So,
yes.
in the fact that, of course, you can get your cheap thrills that way. But, there used to be something to be said for whether it was film noirs or erotic thrillers of the past, or even just psychological dramas, these more mature explorations of these adult topics, usually from foreign films, but occasionally from American films as well. But at least that, you broach these subjects, and seems to have kind of fallen by the wayside. And it seems like, you think about like Baby Girl and some of these films that have taken off recently, that there was maybe a desire through these projects to explore some of these topics. And by the way, DTF St. Louis is an opportunity to explore some of these topics. Anyway, all that is to say that Vladimir seemed to be a very fun, possible way to explore this. And I was so frustrated by this series, primarily because if you've seen the trailer for the show, there is a lot of scenes of Rachel Weisz and Leo Woodall making out or leading up to something. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, minor spoilers here, it turns out that for the vast majority of the series, almost the entirety of the series, there is no actual sex between any characters. Mm-hmm. It's all fantasy.
Oh, okay.
Which it has, you could use that as a jumping off point. But it just makes the series very frustrating in many ways, because you just feel like there's nothing ever happening of any kind of real stakes, because it's all just happening in the protagonist's mind. But I was on board. I actually texted you and I said, I saw the first episode. I thought Rachel Weisz was very appealing. She's having a lot of fun. She's an unreliable narrator. She's talking directly to the screen. So it's kind of like Fleabag, if anybody's seen Fleabag in the past. It has of those vibes. It is pretty funny, but then it just gets frustrating as really like nothing happens in the show for long periods of time. And then, of course, I'm not going to spoil things here, but I'm just going to warn people, if they're not committing to this, and your mileage may vary, if you are very much enjoying this series, watch it all the way through. But I'll say that just as I told you, don't even bother watching this. I actually finished it because it's such a short binge, to be honest. So that's kind of the appeal of it as well. that at least stuff happens at the end. But man, the end of this series is so utterly unsatisfying and ridiculous in my mind that I'm like, man, I don't know if at least something happened at the end of the show. But boy, like I to wait till the last episode for stuff to happen, basically, and then for it to be so unsatisfying, just not something I would recommend.
That's too bad.
Yeah, unfortunate. And another college set drama or comedy, I should say, that deals with some of these topics is Rooster, which I don't think you had a chance to watch. Is that correct?
I haven't.
But I would recommend this one based on one episode. I laughed a lot watching this.
Oh, that's great.
I enjoyed it so much, by the way, that I'm so far behind on Shrinking. After I watched this, I actually watched a couple of episodes of the current season of Shrinking to catch up a little bit. And I'm still having my issues with that show. As much as I loved season one, it has over time become maybe a little too comfortable with itself that, I'm just not enjoying it as much as that first season. Of course,
That's interesting that you feel that way. I'm sorry. I know I'm switching topics somewhat, but I caught up on a bunch of Shrinking over the weekend, although I don't think I'm up to date yet. And I really like this season, but a conversation for another time.
Oh, we could touch on it briefly. I do like it. I'm just not, this show's just not as funny for me. I think it's dealing with some really heavy stuff this season. Yes. Yeah. I did want to call out one thing that intersects with this conversation, which is the fact that, of course, Harrison Ford, who played Indiana Jones, is in that series.
It all ties together.
It does. But this is the last episode I watched of Shrinking to let you know where I am in the season, about halfway of the available episodes. But at one point, he walks into the room. He's finally allowed to go back to work.
I just watched that episode. That's the last one I watched.
And he walks into the room and he goes, dun, 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 dun. I'm like, you cannot do the Indiana Jones, the theme, when you're not playing Harrison Ford in this world. Like, so it just broke my mind because I'm thinking like, so Indiana Jones as a character exists in this universe, but is not played by Harrison Ford.
Don't overthink it.
I really was vexed by that. I'm like, hold on a second. He's singing the Indiana Jones theme. You can't do that. All right. Speaking of Indiana Jones, let's talk about DTF St. Louis. So as I mentioned, there's some things that are interesting in this episode, but before we get into the breakdown, most of what I'm going to be talking about here, honestly, and this is maybe the limitation of the show, I want to like assemble the scenes that we have seen between episode 1 and episode 2 into a chronology so that we can start to parse what the mystery might be. And maybe that is not the right way to watch this show but I'm not sure if they're doing a good job of exploring the themes of the show by telling it in this way. That being said, I am curious to know what actually happens. So what's your general opinion?
I'm curious too to know what actually happened, especially when it seems like this universe is just going to contain this very small number of potential murderers.
Yes.
There's the dead guy. There's Jason Bateman, who increasingly, it seems like, did not do it. There's his wife, who we got to see her face full on this episode. So that was nice. And there's the stepson. And then there's, some periphery characters like the Jamba Juice girls and stuff like that. But I am curious to see how this is going to play out. Oh, and of course, there's the detectives as far as like main characters, but obviously they didn't do it.
Well, we don't think they did it.
That's the twist.
That would really be quite the twist.
Well, we got a Sarsgaard this episode.
We did. Good point.
I can never keep track which Sarsgaard is which, but there is the possibility it was him, I suppose.
I loved seeing it. What a choice they took in this series, by the way, to have Peter Sarsgaard up on the screen with his driver's license, with his blonde dreads, which, of course, when we see him, he's not in blonde dreads.
Right.
So just once again, just the choice of we're going to have you put this, I guess, wig on for your, driver's license photo in the context of the show, of course, which cracks me up because I'm like, if this is what your driver, I have recycled my driver's license photo, but if that's what my driver's license photo looked like, I would have definitely updated at some point along the way.
So it is a comedy.
True. But what do you think about, I'm really butting up against the structure of the show. I had a similar issue last week, but last week there were other things that I didn't appreciate so much about the way the show was telling its story. But in that case, we really almost split the episode right down the middle, where we have the story that's being told without a framing device, right? I assume what we're seeing is just presentational. No one's telling us their version of the story, which I think is very important here. And then in the middle of the episode, we switch over to a straight up police procedural. The police investigators become the point of view characters for the remainder of the episode. And now in episode 2, we start with Jason Bateman telling his story. So now we're seeing things from his perspective, which allows him to do something interesting here, right? I think that maybe the most interesting thing that happens in this episode is seeing, and I know you like this, by the way, is this he said, she said, where I presume we're going to see these same events from the point of view of the Linda Cardellini character in the very near future. But in this particular case, she really is playing up this femme fatale type character. She's so overt at everything she's doing. But of course, this is him telling the story, right? So of course, this is his perspective of it. And then we have that bit of information, but then within his framing of the story, we cut away to David Harbour talking about this incident where he rescued somebody in the middle of the street. And how somehow that has to do with his Peyronie's disease, which we still don't know. That's one of the things that made me laugh, was him just going oh, that came later. And Jason Bateman's response going so your penis was hit by a car? So those were, and then he's just oh, no, that came later. But he got interrupted by his dance routine. And of course, another very entertaining element of the episode was actually seeing David Harbour signing at the concert, which I thought was a lot of fun, of course, as well.
Yeah, which brings me back to my original thing of, I just didn't know, or I have not observed in my life, that sign language translations are so prevalent.
That's a good point. I don't know if this is actually something that occurs, but I wouldn't even know if that was the case.
I'll go with it. It just feels like a weird, I think, did you say this was set in 2018?
Yes, I think we see a title card 2018.
So, but that's not that long ago.
Right.
We had that whole discussion about captioning on televisions, which I know this was a live concert. So obviously it's different. I don't know. I'm willing to go with it. It's just not something I have observed in my regular life, that sign language translators are so in demand. But okay.
I think you're seeing that, though. I remember even seeing baseball games when I was a teenager, and they would have, you'd have if it was the World Series or something, I think you could turn on or turn off captioning. But if it was a World Series, sometimes you would actually see in the corner of the screen, someone basically doing the play-by-play through sign.
Yeah, I feel like that's a thing from a long time ago. Not to date ourselves. But
Right. No, absolutely. And that's what I was going to say, is that I think now, even when you go to a concert and they have a large screen, if the musician is performing or whatever, they'll have the simulcast, the text on the screen. But I don't think you would see someone signing. So I don't know, to your point, maybe that's the biggest leap of faith here in this whole entire series, is that this is actually for real, or in this particular case. It also, honestly, there's so many things here that seem like a stretch. Even having some kind of hookup site specific to St. Louis seems ridiculous, considering that there are, so many different dating apps that I guess they simply couldn't use. And once again, I have not even done a deep dive into the actual story to even know if there was an element of the dating apps, or I'm not even sure. So maybe I'll read up on the actual case that this is very, very loosely based on. But if that's the case, I still feel like there is, maybe they just couldn't use the name of one of these more high profile apps.
But to go back to your point about the structure of the episode, one thing that did bother me is I felt like we saw too much of what we had already seen, literally.
Yes.
With no new spin on it, right? That scene where he's introducing the app to Fitz, I felt like it was the exact same scene we saw earlier.
To Floyd, you mean?
Oh, sorry, Floyd. Yes.
Yes. I actually think that is intentional. I think they're showing that scene again because they're trying to correct the impression that I think they created. Again, I'm having issues with these framing devices within framing devices. There's a way to read last week's episode, and again, only because of the way they presented it to us, where Floyd and him are close friends, and then he starts this affair with his wife, right? And then we end on that beat where he simply tells him, I know you're sleeping with my wife, right? So that is what we were presented last week. But by the way, no one's saying this like in a testimonial. It is what the show is presenting to us. And then to your point, we are now discovering, and again, only because this is how they're choosing to tell us the story, that what actually happened was, and like maybe I'll start breaking this down because I had to actually write this down schematically to try to place these events because they have intentionally discombobulated us. And I think, in my opinion, it makes it pretty clear who the actual culprit is here. But we can leave that for later. But in the chronology of this series, from the events we've seen in episode 1 and episode 2, so there is this, he's signing for some reason at this, storm event, this hurricane event or whatever it is in downtown St. Louis. He rescues Floyd, rescues Clark. Then Clark invites Floyd over to his house, correct? For cornhole, or is it the other way around? Oh, no. It's
first
Clark Clark gets invited to Floyd's house, correct?
Yes, and then he returns the favor a couple of weeks later. Or, well, I don't know how much
it
later.
Might be more than a couple. Yeah, given everything that happens in between, I think it's more than a couple of weeks. Okay, so after that, Floyd invites Clark over. His wife is there. We see her face, finally. And at least in Jason Bateman's version of this, in Clark's version of this story, Carol, Floyd's wife, comes onto him really hard right away. And then turns out they both live downtown. Sorry, they both work downtown. They go to the same Jamba Juice. Our Jamba Juice is actually this big. This is an enormous Jamba Juice container.
Real estate is different outside of the New York City metropolitan area. Where everything is so expensive.
I don't mean the size of that. This is true too. We have so much out where we are here in New Jersey. There's so many abandoned retail spaces in these commercial real estate locations that, you could open a massive Panera or Jamba Juice. I wasn't talking about the location. I'm talking about the drink. This drink.
Oh my God, the cup was huge.
That's like a half gallon.
That's a day's worth of calories easily in there.
Exactly. Unless it's the diet version.
As a treat, that would be fine. But these people act like they go there. Like some people go to Starbucks as just a regular part of their usual routine. That seems insane to me, unless that's the only thing you're consuming the entire workday.
That's your entire calories day. But apparently this is like their afternoon pick-me-up. To your point, instead of a coffee, I'm like, holy cow. That is not only bladder busting, like you mentioned. I don't think Linda Cardellini would be able to maintain her physique. She does jog, though. So I guess that is part of how she works off of the 800 calories that she just consumed from that Jamba Juice. But in this version of it, she comes on really strong. They meet at Jamba Juice. She tells him that they have the same Jamba Juice. What a coincidence. We suspect that's not true anyway. We have that confirmed by the end of the episode. So, of course, that in some way she's contrived this meetup. She basically invites herself to go to a baseball game with him by saying she doesn't know what bunting is. I'm pretty sure she knows what bunting is, given the fact that she has to actually umpire these games. And shortly after this date they go on, this baseball game, we don't know exactly how soon, but we see them shortly thereafter having a meeting up in the hotel, and they have this ongoing affair. It's all visible in the text messages. Of course, we actually have confirmation to at least some of this. And then they go to this concert that Floyd's invited them to. Floyd's been preparing for this R&B performance. She is emotional. She's basically reattests her love for Floyd in this moment, which bothers him. She calls off the affair very soon thereafter. And then, again, these are the only things we have confirmed here based on the text messages. He does not text her back after she breaks it off. He texts Floyd, and presumably this is when he starts to weasel his way in with Floyd. Why? That's a good question. Why would he suddenly try to strengthen that relationship? It's a pretty strange way to try to get back with her. This, Occam's razor, the detective here, Homer, has a pretty good theory that, why did you immediately start to buddy up to the friend, to Floyd, I should say? What was your goal there? So that's the open question, of course, that continues here. And I was going to make a point there. Oh, and of course, so then he starts buddying up to him. So what's the reason there? Of course, Homer's version of this is you were trying to rub him out.
Right.
Which is quite a nefarious thing to do. Imagine that, she's broken it off and he's just like, in a way, it's like he's immediately plotting to murder him, which of course they're accusing him of first-degree murder. But we know from watching TV shows and from just his reaction to some of this evidence that this is actually not what occurred. And after they buddy for a while, Floyd ends up dead. And we have Homer's version of the plot. And of course, we have on the opposite side of things, we have Detective Plum's version of the evidence, where, first of all, confirmed from last week, we know that Indiana Jones pornography is actually David Harbour himself when he was younger, probably very proud of him having this. He has a collection of these magazines that he saved, I guess, so he could remember or share it with other people. I'm not sure why he has a whole stack of these, but.
Well, the label on the box was great. Old work papers or something like that.
And of course, there is this, we have Homer's version of things. However, we know that there's a lot of stuff here that doesn't make sense. So where do you want to take things from there? I have my theory of who's actually behind this, given the fact that I think there's only one person who can be responsible, to be totally honest.
I want to hear your theory, but first I want to say an actual LOL moment for me was when they showed the close-up of the Playgirl spread, haha. And one of the shots is him with a snake around his neck because Indiana Jones famously hates snakes.
He hates snakes, that's right.
So, okay, but moving on from that, what is your theory?
Before we get to the theory, I wanted to break down some of the things we see.
Sure.
Here. So, yes. So that's what I lost my train of thought where I was walking through there. So the reason I wanted to walk through that timeline a little bit is then, of course, we see, again, the very awkward introduction of this app in the same scene, like you said, exactly the same scene we saw last week. And now we understand, if we read Homer's theory of the case, that, of course, this is Jason Bateman's character trying to set him up. So that's why there's this kind of awkward transition where he's just like, hey, I heard about this app. And like that whole weird exchange that seemed apropos of nothing last week. Now we see, well, okay, that's the context. He's going to catfish him or some version of that at some point over the course of, the upcoming weeks. And at least that is, of course, Homer's theory of the case makes perfect sense. But there are unexplainable things here. Okay, the unexplainable things. First of all, the first question I have for you, by the way,
bisexual, first of all.
But is that, I'm not even sure.
I'm not sure either.
Yes. That's a big question. I don't actually think that is all on the up and up. I mean, obviously he did meet with the Peter Skarsgård character. So
you also don't hire Peter Skarsgård to show up for 5 minutes.
Yes, he's definitely going to be back. And as a matter of fact, we've seen him in the trailer for the season. So we knew he was going to be in there more than once. Although even when I saw him here, I'm like, oh, was that all they're going to use him for? It seems very unlikely that he won't come back in some way. So there's probably more to his story. But yeah, I even have a theory on that. Like, first of all, why would he put the ad in place where we're looking for like a same-sex hookup? But then also, why was Jason Bateman the person who responded to that ad? And he kind of feels like, oh, someone actually responded to me. So honestly, I think that it's Jason Bateman going to say, well, yeah, I have that ad, but it's not quite what it appears to be. Although that remains to be seen. Like, what was his plan there? Was he trying to just make him not feel so bad about himself? So I'm not sure. But to your broader point is I don't know if that's actually what we're seeing there. There seems to be an overt hint in multiple places that is going to reveal itself to not be exactly what it appears to be. Although, once again, he definitely met up with this guy. Or did he? There's so many things that are question marks here. I do think he did meet up with this guy. Now,
I think so too.
Yeah. Now, whether it was just a curiosity or whatever, remains to be seen. But, his version of it, that it's like, he was going on there for this particular purpose. And when it looks like the only two people he has on there is this guy who he definitely meets up with, as far as what we're seeing presentationally here. And then this fake account or this other account that Jason Bateman had that was communicating with him. But the question remains still, even there, is the Tiger profile, was it actually Jason Bateman? Because when it first gets brought up, he's confused. And then when he goes back and talks to him, he goes, yes, that was my profile. So did you get a read on that? Because that's where I think that there might be something else going on.
You mean the confusion of why are you calling me Tiger, that part?
Yeah, it seems to be that he's not sure what the detective is trying to indicate. And then he comes back like confidently being like, that was me, but that's not what it appears. Basically, what it comes down to, I could just lay out my theory here.
Let me guess it, and then you can tell me.
Yes.
Do you think his wife found his profile and started acting like she was him?
Yes. Or that when he doesn't know what the profile is, that she created this profile. Because what they're saying is, it's almost like very interesting how they explicitly say things. They're like, we know this is your profile. It's from your IP address. But your IP address is just from inside your house.
Sure.
So anyone in the house could have created this account.
It's coming from inside the house.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So who else is in that house? It has to be her or him. And then that gives you another indication when he is calling her.
Right.
Sorry about my allergies. And she is not taking his call and she's upset. But is this all potentially some revenge that she is getting on him, framing him for this when she finds out about the affair? And then he is allowing himself to take the blame because he's martyring himself, knowing that he is the one who betrayed her, right? So that's my theory of the case at this point. But I don't even think the show is hiding that in some way. So yeah, go ahead.
No, it's a solid theory. I agree. And this brings us back to our question last week of, there are so few people here. How is this story going to stretch over 7 episodes or however many episodes it is? Because it seems like it's an interesting story, but a short one.
Yes, that's actually, now that you brought that up, that was the thing I was trying to start the conversation with. And I forgot what my original question was. It's exactly that question. Last week, I had the exact same opinion where I'm like, I'm intrigued by this and I want to know how these pieces fit together. But is there enough here for a story that lasts 7 weeks? And exactly the same thing. So now here we are 2 weeks into this.
And we figured out who did it.
Exactly. And there really seems like who else could possibly be in there. There is one broader twist that I think might still hold true.
Do you think we can rule out Linda Cardellini?
That's a good question.
It seems kind of cutthroat. Maybe she snapped at some point.
Okay. Yeah. That's the other thing I wanted to ask you first of all, or I should say, on top of all that, we see her. Do you think she's really rude to Detective Plum? Or do you think she has a hearing problem? Because multiple times she does not hear.
Was she taping her? What was up with that?
Multiple times she cannot hear what people are saying to her. It's not just then. It's Floyd also. She's like, what? What are you saying? I can't hear you over the phone.
I hadn't picked up on that.
I don't know. I mean, if it is a hearing problem, I don't know how it ties into.
Is that why he knows sign language?
Oh my God, that would be so funny. He's been learning it this whole time. So.
In anticipation of her fully losing her hearing.
He doesn't want to be too overt about it, but that's the real reason he's been learning.
Interesting point, though. What is that about? I am curious. I thought maybe she was recording the detective. I hadn't realized that this was carrying through to other aspects of her relationships.
Yeah, in the moment, I'm like, she's being so rude, or, that first of all, the detective is pretty far away from her in the room. It's like maybe she just scoot a little closer. But then I made me think about the fact that's not the first time she's unable to hear somebody talk. In that episode. So I'm curious if that's, and you make a really good point. Maybe that is why he's started to learn sign language, because maybe she does have some kind of issue where she's losing her hearing. Oh, but as far as whether we can, I would say there is a version of this, which obviously that's what the show is trying to present, especially in this very much showing Carol, the Linda Cardellini character, as this femme fatale here, seducing him. There's a version of it where she is partially responsible for this, and like they even asked, did Floyd have an insurance policy or something like that? And she's like, no, they did not. I'm sure if she's lying about that, they would find out. But it does seem like, first of all, be incredibly conniving if she did do that. Then how does she pay? Like, how does she cash out on this particular thing if there's no insurance policy?
True.
But more importantly, it's this question as to, is it possible? Because, for example, when the hutch, we keep all our, I don't know, is that a hutch? I wouldn't call that a hutch, but we keep all our
That
papers.
was not what I remembered being a hutch from growing up at all. That was a closet full of paperwork.
Exactly. But if it seems like she would do a better job of hiding certain aspects, because she's trying to create a certain story to frame the Jason Bateman character, that she would have made the story a little cleaner. Like, she doesn't do herself any favors with some ways that she's presenting the evidence of the case. And then, of course, as far as, like, you know, the Occam's razor version of this, like the simplest explanation, that I don't believe for a second, because Jason Bateman has left such a paper trail that leads right to his doorstep. It seems there's no way that he did this unless he's a complete and utter moron. I mean, he rides the bike to the location. He creates this fake profile. He leaves this paper trail of text messages, and you know what I mean, like it's all seems, obviously every piece of evidence points only to him. So it does not seem like he is responsible for this at all.
I agree.
But I know you like, for example, The Affair. So did your ears perk up at all when you have like this, potentially there's this theory of the case where the show itself will re-explore these same events from different people's perspectives as we walk through the plot?
I do always enjoy that. But here I was a little bit annoyed at the reintroduction of the scene on the swing set and then in the Outback Steakhouse, the emptiest Outback I've ever seen in my life, by the way. So I didn't love that part of the reconstruction.
Oh, and of course, the other thing that is still a big mystery here is the very button on episode 1 that, once again, reconstructing the timeline in this particular episode, it seems like they are just starting to become close friends when they're stretching at the gym. And we know from episode 1 that is when he says, I know you're sleeping with my wife. Mm-hmm. So that's where their friendship began at that point, when this affair has pretty much ended. I mean, we don't know if it continued in some ways in the future, but at that moment, it seems like she's cut it off. And the David Harbour character is aware of this and is telling him that he's aware of it. And that's where their relationship is beginning. So it doesn't seem like, like, once again, it doesn't seem like, if you want to buy that he was setting him up to get his wife, again, that theory doesn't seem to hold water when you're literally talking about this situation where he's aware of what's going on or what was going on. So, I mean, like we said, how does the show sustain itself for another 5 weeks? I guess we will see. Theoretically, we see things from, this would be very difficult to watch a show this way, by the way. What I'm about to outline here, we see the story from David Harbour's perspective next week, let's say, for example, which may be the case because we do see Skarsgård again in the trailer for next week. So maybe we see everything from his point of view, and then we find out what actually was happening. Maybe not the day of who killed him, but everything leading up to it. Then we see things from Carol's point of view. She obviously, by the way, she did not drink the same Jamba juice, right? So either
Watermelon breeze.
I think she tells the detective that they drank the same drink. So it is possible there's a version of this where it's actually the Jason Bateman character who is drinking the watermelon breeze to get, I mean, it's so funny that so much of this hinges on what drink you order.
The cups were opaque. It could have been a watermelon breeze, and she called it a go-getter.
I was thinking the other, I mean, my theory was the same, was that, like when we see Detective Plum go in there, they're like, oh, we know exactly, which of course we all know that that's true, right? When you show up, yeah, I think you can attest to this, Sona, right?
Oh, wait, the girl said, I'm sorry. I just was thinking out loud. The girl said there was the one time she didn't order a watermelon breeze. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, they did say that? I didn't catch that.
Yeah, right at the end when she's talking with the detective, they said, oh, so she always orders a watermelon breeze, and she's talking to the two girls. And then one of them says, well, there was that one time, and then it cuts away.
Oh, okay. So then that's interesting. So if that's there, then that does mean that she was the one who then orders the other drink. Okay. Because I was going to say, if they were just saying that we had the same drink, and wow, kismet, when she's making that, when she tells that version of the story, then if that's the case, then it could be that he is lying about the drink he has so that he can buddy up to her. But in that particular case, that definitely indicates, of course, that she's the one who lied about her Jamba Juice order. It's just so funny to think about so much of this talking about the stupid Jamba Juice order. But,
well, I mean, the whole introduction at the original party is he talks about how he loves the go-getter. So,
good point. Good point. Yes. So,
and she talks about how Floyd gets the chocolate PB one or whatever.
Right. That's right.
And so she knew the drink. So, I mean, that to me is, to the extent that she initiated this inappropriate relationship, it tracks that she would then use that information.
Another kind of silly thing about the show is, again, just the, I guess maybe that's what I laughed about. I was trying to think, maybe this is the thing I laughed about, was that they are, when they're meeting, and it does seem like it was initiated by her at first, that they want to fulfill their sexual fantasies. And his sexual fantasies, to have her sit on, or to place her weight on him.
Yes.
As she says.
What a strange way to say it. Yeah.
Right. Well, I guess doesn't want to get too detailed.
I guess so.
And while she just does her mundane tasks every day, an interesting fantasy he has. And then he wants her to explore her fantasies, which I guess we will maybe discover more of as we see things maybe from her point of view. But I do think that's the thing that is interesting. I was talking about how this thing could be structured. We might see Harbour's point of view, then we see her point of view, then we could eventually see Emmy's point of view, spelled E-I-M-Y or something.
Yeah, what a weird way to spell
Very
that.
strange spelling for that name, for sure. So then we could see the wife's point of view. I would assume that would come very late in the series, because that would be where, the reveal of everything happens. And then maybe we can see like what actually happened. That gets us to what, episode 5 or 6? I guess that could be the way it's structured. So
right.
it's possible. And you could throw there could be one episode where it's all like the case being presented, and maybe the case falls apart because of some contradictory evidence. So there you go. I think I just outlined the season of the show.
There you go. It works.
Yeah. And then we'll finally see in the very last episode what actually happened. So if we have these multiple suspects potentially, and I guess it does make sense, right? You have here in this episode, this is the case against Jason Bateman, even though there's a lot of holes in it. And then we could say this is the case against the wife, against the Carol as well, his wife. So yeah, I guess that could be the way they organize the season, but it still seems pretty thin, like you mentioned.
Yeah, maybe there's going to be some plot twist that we're not anticipating that takes up a decent amount of space. But this story that we're dealing with here seems very tight. So I don't know.
But I'm like, now that I'm like kind of discussing it here, I do think about how there is this potential for more complexity than we're outlining here. Because again, if David Harbour is aware of the affair early on, as they're starting to become close friends, it does raise questions that, which I guess might be just become clear over time, for the simple fact that, maybe Jason Bateman is trying to subvert him in some way, but over time they just become actual friends. And then of course we are pretty certain that it's not him who does the murder anyway. So if it is even a murder, that's the other option I've been saying since the very first episode, is for all we know, this is the Floyd character just depressed and doing himself in and inadvertently making it look like a suicide. Like a murder. Oh, by the way, I want to hear what you're about to say, but I just want to throw in there before I forget that there is a huge piece of evidence here that I didn't mention, which again,
The prescription, right?
the prescription,
I was about to say
right?
that.
Of course, because how did that get into the drink? And
Yes.
even if he puts it in himself, like let's say that's the case, still the fact that the delivery is to the Bateman's house again points the finger, if not at Bateman, which we're pretty clear that it's almost certainly not going to be the case. It's too obvious and doesn't make any sense. Why would you self-incriminate that badly? Again, just imagine like having this delivered to your home and then killing somebody with it like a day later. Like it doesn't make any sense at all. Like that is like, unless you're a real idiot, which I mean, criminals can be idiots, of course, but it just sounds very self-incriminating. There's other people who live in that house.
Well, I also will note, and it might not mean anything, when they put the prescription up on the screen, and I didn't freeze it in that scene, but I did notice that on that list of drugs, there was also sildenafil, which is Viagra. So make what you want of that.
Interesting. I didn't notice that.
It was towards the bottom of the screen.
And what is this? This is an amphetamine, right?
That's what they said. Yeah.
So, I mean, you wouldn't necessarily only get an amphetamine to kill somebody with it. Obviously, there's other reasons to have amphetamines.
Well, it must have been prescribed for some legitimate medical need.
Right. So, yeah. But it was delivered. But regardless, it was not his prescription. So,
David Harbour's prescription, right?
correct.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
So, how did it get into his drink?
Well, this brings us back to the wife would have access. Emily. The woman whose name starts with an E.
I mean, I rewound when he calls her and leaves the voicemail and he says Emmy. But yeah, I definitely wanted to hear the pronunciation because I'm like, why is it spelled that way?
Yeah. So many vowels.
Too many vowels. Yeah. So the show is asking us to parse these contradictory pieces of evidence. But we know, since this is Homer's theory and Homer has been wrong about all his assumptions so far, that by definition, it must be the case that this is not going to be the true perpetrator. Although, I mean, man, from an evidence perspective, it's like pretty piled up here.
Agree.
So yeah, we don't have too much to say beyond that on the show. The show is, again, and maybe here's my criticism of the show, that I was hoping, and maybe the show will develop this over time, that it could be an interesting way to talk about this kind of existential crisis everybody has in their midlife, kind of saying like, I'm not the person, like speaking of the magazine, just in one reference point here, you're not the person you thought you were when you were younger. You're trying to plan for the future for like that later time in your life. But of course, you still have your unfulfilled desires, let's say, in the midst of your life as well. So it's kind of balancing all these things out, which of course is all about what all these midlife shows are about. But I feel like this show, in playing with all this time and audience perspective, or I should say character perspective, that it doesn't lend itself to really build a strong framework for exploring those ideas. But maybe we're still just in the setting the stage part of the series.
I mean, it's only 2 episodes in so far.
Yeah. And by the way, the critics only got to see the first 4 episodes. So there might be, to your point about like twists to come, there could be some significant change of the focus of the show going forward. One last character to bring up here is, what do you make of this psychotic adopted son he has? Yeah,
that never went to the dance classes.
Yeah, he seems to be pretty, what's the word? He's just surly.
Antisocial. Yeah.
Antisocial, sure.
And we open the whole series with that scene of Floyd and the stepson trying to go through a therapy session or whatever that is together. So it feels like that character will have more importance than we've seen so far, which I would be curious about. Maybe the stepson worked together with Jason Bateman's wife to kill Floyd.
That'd be a strange pairing for sure. There was this kind of my critique of last week's episode, by the way, the premiere episode, was the fact that the Emmy, who we literally did not see her face clearly in a full face until this particular second episode of the series, And right away, she was on my radar as that's who's going to be the culprit, because why are we like having her in the background, slowly coming into focus over the course of the episode? It was as if like this forgotten character is going to be more relevant, as over the course of the episode and over the course of the series, which makes me, maybe it was putting its thumb on the scale as to what's actually going on. But there is the son too, who obviously has his own behavioral problems, and
For sure.
and there's going to be more to his story as well as the show progresses. What did you make? I mean, I actually thought the scene was very sweet when you see her seeing him do his best, give it all to when he's signing at that concert.
So too.
And she gets very emotional. And I thought that was a really great scene, by the way, because you do see earlier on multiple times now in these 2 episodes, I'm like, why are they together at all?
Yes.
And then you see that she does really love him, right? Like, he obviously is not the best provider. He obviously is not great at everything. And he gets emotional reading Batman comic books. But at the same time, that she knows that he's a really good guy and he's trying his best. And I think that is a thing that
there's a genuine fondness there, I think, that comes across in that scene.
Yeah, and I think it's important. You went back to the very first scene of the whole entire series where we see him with this really horrible, very difficult, let's say, not horrible, difficult teenage boy, which I mean, all teenage boys go through a phase where they're difficult, speaking as a former teenage boy. And so, he's dealing with that and he is trying his best, right? Like, I think it's important that we begin with that scene where he is just like the dance class. He is trying something to connect with this kid.
Yeah. And in that opening scene, it's kind of sad how he's going through his pre-written speech about how it's okay to get C's. And then the boy corrects him, I'm not your son, I'm your stepson. And you see that in his little pre-written note, he had written referred to himself as dad, and he scratches it out. That was sad. Yeah.
He just says Floyd or something at the end. So yeah, that is sad that, he knows, but it's also in a way tells you something about the character, right? Because he's not going to push it. He's
true.
Accept that, he and make that correction in the script, which I thought was really nice. And, I think kind of says a lot about him. So yeah, be curious to see this story from Floyd's point of view next week and see what we discover. But yeah, I'm intrigued and still just exactly like you already referenced. I'm like, how does this thing keep going from multiple? Don't understand. There doesn't seem to be that much more that we need to know.
I agree. So
could be like an onion.
From now, we'll see if we're saying, yeah, they should have ended this already. Or, hey, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. Or we could just keep being like, next week we'll be like, oh, that was interesting, but I don't know how they do this for another week. And they just keep doing it. And so maybe that's part of the appeal of the show in some ways. All right. We will touch base again next week. And we'll see how long we continue to watch this show. Check out Rooster and see if maybe we could discuss that. And if you want to also, by the way, this is just an announcement for everybody out there. Anybody who cares about the Scarpetta character, is that Scarpetta?
Yep. They're advertising that quite heavily. I feel like I've seen a bunch of commercials just in the last day.
Well, Nicole Kidman, those series usually at least momentarily get a lot of attention. And this is a binge, by the way, so it's not going to go week to week. But if anybody is curious about that character or an adaptation of those stories, do check it out. And maybe I'll sample it. Maybe my wife and I will watch a couple episodes of that.
Jamie Lee Curtis is in it too, I learned this morning.
Oh, yes. Well, she plays the mom, I think. She plays mom. So that is, so maybe we'll sample that as well and discuss it. Oh, have you, by the way, watched any of All Her Fault?
I haven't yet, actually. I need to. Oh my gosh, is our Peacock expiring?
No, I kept it going because I went to cancel it and then they offered me some really cheap rates.
I remember, but I couldn't remember how long you extended it for.
No, it's still going. And the reason I mentioned is because my wife just binged like 3 episodes of it. She's 1 episode from the ending. And
liking it.
It's getting, I knew from just my own spoilers intentionally. I tried to watch the show. I didn't get into it. And then I spoiled myself on it. But I had completely forgotten everything after spoiling it because this was months ago. So now I've been watching, just dipping in as she's watching it, just kind of watching. And I remember what the big, there was like no joke, like in the last, leading up to the very last episode, which has more twists to come, because like I said, I spoiled myself on it, that penultimate episode of the season has so many twists in it. I'm like, oh my God, like this is like just throwing 10 twists at the end of the show. So a pretty crazy. Oh, I mean, this was popular though for Peacock. So I guess it works for people. But if you like a lot of twists, man, this show's got multiple twists going at the same time. It's bananas.
I do love a twist, but there is a limit.
Yeah, I think it's a little too much overdone on the twists. Yeah, you won't see it coming, that's for sure. But it's pretty bonkers and really unnecessarily complicated.
It is so far-fetched that you'll never be able to guess what happens.
Exactly. That's kind of the logic there, I kind of said. But, and of course, speaking of my wife, we continue to cover The Pit here on the podcast week to week. And also Paradise, where Darren and I are talking about Paradise. So all those things on the feed currently. So dip into all of those and listen along with us. And yeah, maybe we'll check out a little bit of Scarpetta and we'll discuss the next episode of DTF St. Louis and find out what's actually going on in this show, at least the version of it next week before they recontextualize again the following week. But I do think that my concern is that the show is going to be like playing things out to be like, aha, it was Emmy. And I'm like, we knew that in episode 1. What are you talking about, man? That better not be the full payoff. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we're going to find out.
Yeah, I guess so. All right. And of course, yeah, in the next few weeks, of course, we'll also be discussing Your Friends and Neighbors, which is coming back in less than a month.
By the way, I know you are not a fan, but I also keep seeing references to the 4 seasons coming back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Unpleasant reminder.
Yeah, I did not like that show. I don't know if I even saw the finale. Kim watched that as well. But I think I only made it to the penultimate episode. I think she finished it. I think she did. Not a big fan. Did you like it? Did you like that show?
I enjoyed it. I don't think if it never came back, I don't think it's something I would miss. But I probably will watch this next round of it.
I mean, I like the cast, so maybe I'll
right,
sample.
Exactly.
I might sample it and just see where. I mean, it didn't really work for me. Another show that is about midlife, marriage, and could be an interesting topic. I think that's an interesting topic to explore, but again, not very satisfying. But thematically interesting, I guess. I prefer I have some crime element to it. So throw a little like Your Friends and Neighbors in there. Okay.
No murders in the 4th season. There is a death.
There is a death, though. Yes,
but yeah.
I was actually going to bring that up because one of the things I really didn't like about that, but I guess I didn't want to spoil things. So just in case people haven't watched it. Yeah, and we'll watch that along the way. Like I mentioned, we have Scarpetta this week. We have Imperfect Women coming in 2 weeks. I just saw the trailer for that when I was watching Shrinking, actually, and which I know you're looking forward to.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also a book adaptation, correct?
I don't know.
There's so many book adaptations actually recently.
Yeah, it makes us think that maybe we should just read the books. But
it's possible. Yeah, it might probably take less time than, I mean, when you take a 300-page book and you turn it into like a 9-hour series,
right?
It's probably not always going to be that satisfying. But yeah, it all remains to be seen, and we will continue to watch it, at least until Your Friends and Neighbors starts. We'll see if we finish it. We go all the way to the end. We'll see. But anyway, yeah, so we will keep dipping in. All right, Sona, thank you again for the conversation.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, talk to you soon. Bye.
Take care.